There's another officer there. And he said, I would never, ever trust another policeman in my life if that happened to me. And he said, I'd hate every cop. And I thought, well, I don't have a beef with every cop. But that was, to me, kind of strange that he said that way. Of course, we know he knew who I was talking about. Or he may have known the informer. I don't know. But that kind of stood out to me.
Or he may have known the Salmons. Well, he did know the Salmons because he'd known Cotton for 30 years.
Yeah.
In 2000.
Yeah.
Yes, and by the way, Susan, that the introduction of Cotton as a new character in the Joey Watkins saga was kind of a mind-blowing moment for me.
Oh, yeah.
As you know, Mitchum, the Joey's case is just so infuriating and never made sense as a crime at all. And to hear that Cotton had, obviously there's no evidence actually connecting the man to it, but that he had committed crimes similar was a big shocker for me. And
then used him as an informant. So
yes.
The officer that investigated that case, the shooting of JT, he was actually one of the officers that was doing the wiretap on Joey and Mark at the same exact time. So he had to have noticed some kind of correlation there between these two highway shootings, but never thought to inquire further. So my theory, here's my totally not supported, made up fantasy theory, but I keep thinking with the Cotton thing, I think he was trying to pin the shooting he'd done possibly on Mark and Joey, because he keeps saying facts about Isaac's death, like the person was in a blue truck and had this kind of gun that actually match him and his shooting that he was accused or the main suspect in. So I think he was trying to set up an excuse to be like, oh, it wasn't me that did that one. It was Mark and Joey.
That they were serial shooters. Okay.
I was glad to hear Joey brought out in this my story. I feel good about that. I mean, that's
how I found you. I was trying to find other stuff, and I'm like, why did searches for Tammy Colston and Cotton Salmon keep bringing up this Mitchum guy?
Yeah. Well, hearing Joy's name brought up in this, that made me feel good. And this guy got to get out, man. He's got to get out. So surely someone will hear this thing or see this thing that here's a case 43 years ago, the same system, and here's Joey's case, and it's still happening in this county.
Yeah, well, we're still thinking of you, Joey, so I'm hoping he's still hearing the show.
And the sad part about it is it still goes back to the protecting the peers, the people who were involved in this. The system protecting the system. Still happening.
Yeah, and I always wonder how long are these. Obviously, Tammy Colston is still a judge. Stanley Sutton is no longer on the force. But are they worried that if it'll just unravel too many convictions? Is that the fear?
I think it's part of it, but I think it's mostly just not wanting to admit they could have been part of something that got it wrong so many times.
Yeah, both. Is both in it.
Susan, actually, I wanted to ask you, you grew up near Rome, is that correct? So has it surprised you delving into this side of Rome? I mean, I can't imagine this was something you were aware of when you were growing up.
Yeah, well, I kept calling my mom and being like, you never told me about this. You never told me about this. My mom was living in Rome that summer. She was in Rome when all this went down, when Grace was murdered. And there's a beer joint she went to. It was one of the more nicer ones, I think. But she didn't have a clue about any of this side of Rome. One story she did tell me, I told her about the new case, what I was doing. I mentioned Judge Scoggin. She was good friends with Judge Scoggin's daughter. And then at some point, she doesn't know what really happened. But she remembers sitting, when she was a kid, little, sitting on the stairway in their house where you could sort of kind of eavesdrop in the kitchen. And she'd hear her parents, my grandma and granddad, talking in worried tones about Judge Scoggin and something. And she thought it was something about the house they were in. They'd bought it and he'd wanted it. But it's all she recalls. It's just them being nervous about Judge Scoggin and her not being able to be friends with Scoggins' daughter anymore.
So it was very unclear. It was just sort of an air of fear about the man.
Or not even fear, just like it was definitely, there was something about Judge Scoggins that my grandparents were like concerned about. And it could just be, you know what, you piss off the local judge. She's got a lot of power. But other than that, she'd had, I mean, growing up as a teenager then, this was obviously a side of Rome she wasn't exposed to.
Scoggins had connections with the Purple Gang out of Detroit years ago, before he was a judge. And
I don't know who the Purple Gang is.
they were the hits.
You're going to have to fill me in on that.
Hit squads for Al Capone, the Jewish gangsters, and they did hits for Al Capone called the Purple Gang. And they operated in and out of here this is back before my time, but my brothers knew about it. But Scoggins was connected there in the beginning. And the Dixie Mafia was still operating pretty strong around here at that time.
People always like roll their eyes when ideas of police conspiracies come up, or like, you know, political people being involved in this kind of crime. But like in you look at like the record in Northwest Georgia, and Christ, like the number of sheriff's departments or other government agencies that were just super blatantly corrupt is so high. It's not conspiracy theorizing. It's kind of just how it was.
There's a movie called The Phoenix City Story. It was made in the 50s, and the Dixie Mob was operating real big there. And the good part about this movie is they killed his name was Patterson, and he was running for Attorney General, and they killed him. And they went in there and started filming right after he was killed. Eisenhower had to send in the militia. It got bad. And so they went in and started cleaning up Phoenix City. According to Dink, who was involved in a lot of stuff, he said a lot of those guys just moved in on here. Phoenix City, they kind of shut it down, but they just moved into Rome. So it's a movie worth watching. It gives you enlightens you of what it was like in that time period.
Mm-hmm. And Judge Scoggins was eventually voted out of office.
The day Grace died, he lost that election. That's part of why they closed up early that night, is that election was the next day. And Judge Scoggins got voted out.
But he didn't get voted out in time to appoint me the drunkest lawyer he could find.
Yeah.
I just don't know how you look. Let's find the drunkest one. You know, there's all levels of drunk. Found him. That one, he's only mildly buzzed. Let's find the drunkest one. But has Judge Scoggins ever faced any kind of repercussions for his actions?
No. He got voted out and became a senior judge and got a ridiculously big paycheck. And because the guy who took his spot on the bench, Judge Frazier, it's a whole nother drama, but he made sure that like Judge Frazier like didn't get paid, like had a ridiculously small paycheck. And then he gets a senior judge status and like collects a really large judge salary for like, you know, going around and sitting on benches that need extra help. He had a sexual harassment issue where he may have been, I can't tell how much punishment he got, but he was sexually harassing women in the courthouse. And after that, he doesn't seem to have been active as a judge, and then he passed away a few years back.
Yeah.
Well, Susan, Mitchum, do you have anything that you'd like to add to this?
This is amazing. I'm very honored to speak with both of you, and I appreciate everything. One thing is you mentioned something about the things that changed with the moonshine and stuff like that. You can still get moonshine here.
Really?
The real stuff.
Even though there's a liquor store where you can just buy some perfectly marvelous Woodford Reserve. It's wonderful stuff. That was not a paid promotion stuff. I just discovered it. It's lovely. But I guess moonshine is stronger.
Oh yeah. It's like that guy down in Cave Springs said. It's made in the woods.
Yes. Okay.
I imagine their customers are like the old guard, the ex-bootleggers, and hipsters who want a more authentic experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they're drinking it out of a mason jar.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mason jars. And there are people who are just still, some of them around make it for themselves and their friends, really, you know. But and they're doing all this flavored stuff now. you can get it flavored. They didn't have that back in my day. It was just when you drink moonshine back then, you can believe you drink it to get drunk.
Yes, that was the purpose.
Not for the flavor.
Susan, was there anything else you wanted to add?
God, there is so much more to all these stories that I wish I could have. It really is like one story leads to another, to another, to another. And there's so much I just couldn't cover in this podcast for various reasons. But there are a lot of crazy stories that were going on in Northwest Georgia back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s that I think remain untold. It just amazed me, the stories I'd find. Like, how has no one ever done a movie on this? How has no one ever done a book on this? How's this stuff that I didn't know? Well,
we have many more podcasts to go. So
everybody that, and I'm not seeking a movie. I'm seeking justice, but I've got more and more comments as sounds like it'd be a good movie. Sounds like it'd be a good book. But Robert Mitchum's gone, and I have no clue how to pursue
There's
that.
other actors other than Robert Mitchum.
He would have been the best judge.
Yes, I will age into the role. I will. I'm often confused for him. So
you know who you could play? You could play Jimmy.
I could play Jimmy. Okay. Oh.
No, Jimmy was cool, man. He was cool. I mean, this guy, look what he accomplished.
Did you a favor?
Yeah. He got me transferred out of a prison that I couldn't get transferred out of for 5 years, and it had to be a warden had to do it. Well, the warden was doing it, but the warden didn't know he was doing it.
Yes. And that was actually one of the most satisfying moments of the podcast, when you knew and he didn't.
Yeah.
That was absolutely beautiful. Well, thank you guys so much.
Thank you, John.
It was such a pleasure talking to you, Mitchum, and I hope this all brings you peace. And Susan, you have done amazing work. I can speak for the Undisclosed audience when I marvel at the depth to which you have investigated this stuff. So we as listeners are incredibly grateful.
Well, thank you, John, and I look forward to now that we're heading to a new season, returning to Addendums with you for next few series we got going on, actually.
I am so excited. The new cases are a complete mystery to me. Hopefully I won't screw this up.
Well, I can say we're leaving Rome and we're leaving Baltimore.
Okay.
For the moment, so
we can depart. There's a whole breadth of America that has wrongfully convicted people. So we will find them.
What am I going to do, Susan? What am I going to do?
You're going to help me root out every wrongful conviction in Floyd County.
Okay.
There we go.
All right.
And you got to consult on the Lana movie. When we make the Lana bank robber movie, you've got to consult.
Yeah.
That's the best career, is being a Hollywood consultant, because you just swan in, they fly you places, you just hang out, and they ask you questions every now and then. They say, oh, is this the right piece of equipment? Oh, is this the right car? And you say, yep, or nope, and you're good, man.
Yeah,
That's the gig you need.
I would love
like
that.
a consultant.
Well, we'll try to work it out. Thank you so much. Well, that is it for this addendum, but I will be back. That's right, I will be back hosting the addenda when Undisclosed returns, and I'm so excited about it. And remember, all of the case documents and photos are posted at undisclosed-podcast.com, and there's so much to look into there. You can follow Undisclosed on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at the handle @UndisclosedPod. And I wanted to thank D. Watkins for his incredibly insightful hosting of the addenda during Undisclosed's investigation of the Freddie Gray case. He brought invaluable context to what is an American tragedy. I also want to thank Hannah McCarthy and Rebecca Lavoie of Partners in Crime Media for audio production, and Mithil Telhan, who is our project manager.